Hello, everybody. Andre Khatchaturian here. He's Jason Takhtadjian. It's Friday, January 24. It's the ASN podcast. We're here to discuss Jason's incredible week in Los Angeles, California. He helped set some records for ASN. In the last 30 days, our Instagram has had 2 million views on Reels. We're approaching 20,000 followers. It's all because of Jason's hard work in LA at the Intuit Dome at UFC 311. Arman Tsarukyan didn't show up. He didn't fight, but Jason was there bringing the house down. Jason, how are you carrying the team? How is your back?
And my back's been better, but you know what? I have to be grateful. It's been great. It's been
Yeah.
great
How does it
because,
feel that your boss,
yeah,
me, Andre Khatchaturian, the founder of ASN, is on an island, remote island in the Caribbean with his feet up by a pool, enjoying 85-degree weather while you have to do all that work? Was that a little annoying?
no, actually, it wasn't. I'll say this, I'm actually glad that you went, you enjoyed yourself. We held it down in LA, obviously staying in contact with you, and we'll go through the entire fight week because it is a roller coaster when it comes to just what we encountered at ASN and what happened in the fight week. Obviously, everybody knows about Armand pulling out. But I'm sure one of these days are going to come, Andre, that we'll be both on an island, hanging out and relaxing while some ASN content is, being had as well. So I know that day's
Absolutely,
coming.
yeah. I,
I know
I
that day's
felt I
coming.
felt like a kingpin. I'm just in my cabana watching the NFL playoffs on an island. I felt like a king. I was like, wow, all this work is being done for me. No, but in all
Well,
seriousness, you did an incredible job, and very proud of you. And I was on my phone nonstop, especially when the breaking news happened on Friday. We were constantly trying to navigate how to uh, still provide good coverage because we were there. We had to take advantage of it, and I think we really did a great job. Let's start off on Wednesday, which was media day, correct? Wednesday was media. It was earlier media
that's
day.
that's correct. I actually drove into town Tuesday afternoon, got ready for, the week ahead, and Wednesday early in the morning, you wake up, go drive down to downtown LA to the Intercontinental, go up to what, sixth or seventh floor, and that was where the media room was, and that is where all the main card fighters ended up coming through, one after another. I'm blanking on who the first fighter was, but I do remember the second fighter was Arman himself. So he
I
actually came
believe the
in.
first fighter wasn't it the Dutch guy Renier de Ritter?
Yeah, yeah, RDR. That's correct.
See, I
That's
was on
correct.
an island and I knew that.
Say that again.
I was on an island and I knew that.
Now I remember his answers. I remember he was really looking forward to the grappling exchanges between Arman and Islam whenever he was asked about that fight. But yeah, Arman comes in, and there's a big presence around him. Media gets to ask him questions. I get to ask him about, what it means to represent such resilient people, especially since everything that Armenians in Artsakh have gone through. And, Arman again just says that it's his motivation. He kind of kept it, straight to the point when it came to his media day answers. So we kind of got that vibe from him. We talked to Benil Dariush about Khingali, so that was amazing. We talked to Marab about staying positive and him looking forward to that fight with Umar, which was
And
huge. It was
and
quite
let's
huge.
Mirab stole the show for ASN as well. His
Yes,
personality was incredible.
we
Uh,
were de facto Georgian sports news as well.
yeah, we really were. And even before you started posting videos from the questions you asked, our sponsor Nelson Gevorkian, he was there and he posted a video of Merab saying Tzavat on them, which was our most viewed video on our Instagram all week. Funny enough, he sponsored it too. So again, special thank you to Nelson Gevorkian for the constant sponsorship throughout the week and the support for helping ASM be what it is today. So
Absolutely.
Wednesday finishes, then Thursday comes around. That's the day of the
The press
ceremonial press
conference, the
conference.
official press
Yes.
conference. So that's where everybody, it's a free event. They go into the Intuit Dome. They closed off most of the arena, just this one bowl section. And that's where Arman once again shows up, and so does all the main card fighters. And I had the opportunity to ask a couple of questions to the fighters and to Dana White. And luckily, the UFC was gracious enough to let me ask a couple questions, go up to the microphone, be one of the first couple people to ask questions. And yeah, I think that, my mindset was, you know, ask a similar question to Islam that I did with Media Day because he gave a good answer talking about, oh, I've fought all over the world. And in my mind, I'm like, you know what? Maybe that'll invoke another, reaction from him or from the crowd. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. His clip or his answer, rather, to my question ended up getting sent to me by other people from random Russian MMA accounts that were reposting it. So that went well. And then I wasn't expecting that to go as well as it did. So I'm like, oh my God, time to ask the UFC
Well,
Armenia question.
let me pause you here. So
Yes.
when I was on the vacation enjoying myself, I wasn't just enjoying myself. We were having constant dialogue about what we're gonna ask at Media Day, and I mentioned, ask him about bringing UFC to Armenia. Let's see what he
Yeah.
said. It's more of a, you have to realize if you've never been to these press conferences, I feel like the first press conference on Wednesday, that's kind of like the more formal press conference. You ask the more serious questions and how training has been and things of that nature. Whereas on Thursday, you kind of ask the off-ball questions, and there's always some clown crashing the press conference, asking some ridiculous question. There's always trash talk between one or two of the fighters. We saw a lot of that between Merab and Umar, which, by the way, the best part was when Merab would keep saying, "You will be humbled." And Umar, not understanding the context of the word humble in that sentence, said, "I am humble. I am humble."
Right.
That was hilarious. The biggest loser of UFC 311 was the English language, but I digress. The
Yeah, but like you're saying, we did talk about these questions ahead of time, and I knew in the back of my mind, Dana White specifically has been asked about these new location UFC events. For example, South Africa, because of Dricus du Plessis being a champion. And I remember his answer being straightforward, saying, "Hey, we need the infrastructure. We're not sure. We're trying to make it happen." However, now fast forward to this press conference, and I asked the question about UFC to Armenia. Dana White with his hands out saying, yeah, definitely. And he cut off Islam as well because Islam went for the microphone. When I asked that question, I knew he was going to cut me off and be like, what about Dagestan, brother? I felt that was coming. But Dana White immediately jumps in, goes, yeah, definitely. Look at this place. It's going to be a badass night come Saturday. And it hyped up the crowd. I
Now,
was
the
expecting
best part of
nothing
that,
but
though, was you asked him the question. The second the word Armenian Sports News came out of your mouth, you hear a little of a chuckle from Dana White. Like he
Yeah, so
enjoyed hearing those
I'll
words.
tell you a little bit about that. So there were two rows of questioners, and I was on the right side, another guy was on the left side. I was supposed to go after Manuk Akopian, who was the other Armenian journalist we were out there with. But the guy on the left side tried to interject, and UFC media was like waving him off. Dana White got confused, and I'm like, all right, this is the chance to do the introduction. Jason Takhtadjian, Armenian Sports News. And like you said, he got a chuckle out of it, which I don't think he reacted to any of the other questions like that, other than Manuk asking or telling him, welcome to Los
Yeah,
Angeles, and Dana White with some poor words saying, this place is all fired up.
true. Yeah, a little too soon. But I think it was more so your professionalism. I did notice throughout that entire press conference, nobody was introducing themselves. They were just asking their questions. And I think it was nice that you said what you stated your name and your affiliation and you asked the question. And, nobody else was doing that. I don't think anybody else was doing that. So I think he kind of appreciated that you did that. And maybe he's just, and it turns out he's an ASN fan. He got a little chuckle out of it, and we appreciated that. And obviously, your question, the one we used, the one you posted on your own account, just exploded. Obviously, that was the UFC feed. We tried not to post the UFC feed on ASN's page. We posted our own original content, and you had a little celebrity moment there, huh, Jason?
I wasn't expecting it to blow up that much, but I guess it did. And I mean, for me, I'm just grateful because, who else has this sort of opportunity, right? I had an event the day after UFC 311 with like a lot of young Armenians and a lot of professionals in the scene. And a lot of people were like, oh, you're the guy that asked that question to Dana. I'm like, I am that guy. Nice to meet you. It
Well,
was a little surreal to
it's
be, recognized for something that for me, it's like a day-to-day work. I'm trying to ask questions. I'm trying to be a journalist, trying to work and, make content. But I guess, it was a win-win situation there because a lot of people caught on to it. And this is the first time I think Dana White's ever been asked about UFC coming to Armenia.
Yeah, it is. I definitely have never asked him that. And it's this was I want to say our fourth fight that we've covered under the ASM brand. You've done the last two. Um, we had minimal. Actually, it's our fifth fight if you count UFC. I forget which card it was, but Caitlin Chukagian fought in Houston, and one of my former interns when I worked at New England Sports Network, he was going to Rice University at
Mhm.
at the time. So I had him. I got him credentialed. He went and he asked. He's not even Armenian. He
Mhm.
went. Sam DiCaprio. He asked him. He went and asked Caitlin Chukagian. Joe Biden had just recognized the Armenian genocide, so he went and he asked her about Biden recognizing the Armenian genocide, and that was one of the first fights ASN covered. It was the second
Wow.
fight. Prior to that, the first fight we covered, I was there in New York. Melsik Bagdasarian was fighting. I believe Edmund Shahbazian was fighting too. This was UFC 268. This was back in 2021. That was the last fight I covered. Then the third fight ASN covered was in Miami. We had my
99.
friend Ike Oganessian went and he covered that for us. And the last two, the Tsarukyan fights, you went covered UFC 300, record breaking. Obviously Tsarukyan won. He became internationally known then. If any Armenian didn't know who he was that day, they figured out who he was after that fight. And it obviously led up to the hype led up to last weekend in Los Angeles. And everyone was expecting him to fight. Friday comes. I'm at the pool enjoying, the sun and just scrolling on my phone. And it was, I want to say it was about 1 p.m. where I was. So it was 9 a.m. in Los Angeles. And you were at the weigh-ins in the
So that's correct.
Intercontinental,
The weigh-in
the official
started at
weigh-ins. So I get the
8.
news that from Red Corner MMA that
Right.
Arman Tsarukyan is out. And I'm like, this can't be. I show my wife,
So
I'm like, he's out of the fight. And I'm like, I need to find out if this is true. So I call you. And you're in
yeah.
the way and you're in the weigh-ins. And what happens next?
So let me take a quick step back because the weigh-in started at 8 in the morning, and obviously with LA traffic, you gotta wake up earlier, you gotta commute, and it was an early morning for me already. So I'm already groggy. I'm like, oh, looking forward to just this official weigh-in, ceremonial weigh-in. I'm thinking in my head, it's gonna be a relatively calm
Easy day.
day, right? It's a day before the fight. I have my head focused on, what the objective is. Get ready for the weigh-ins. We see Marab come in for the weigh-in, and then Islam come in for the weigh-in, and then Umar come in for the weigh-in. So the main and co-main fighters are there, and then we don't see Arman. So now we're just waiting patiently. Half an hour goes, an hour goes. By the time the hour goes, we're getting really worried, and all of a sudden we start getting notifications, and it's that notification from Red Corner MMA. A lot of people are hesitant at first because they're like, okay, this is the first reporting. We need to wait and see if this is going to be. But then I see Dana White post on Instagram making it official. And once I see Dana White posting a video saying Arman Tsarukyan is pulled out, that's when I get the phone call from you saying, Jason, is this legit? Is this real? Well, what's going on? And that's when I tell you, I think it's legit because now we got it confirmed from at least two different sources.
Right.
The
And
horse's mouth, Dana White, is more than enough. And then John Anik announces it in the media room about a couple minutes later on the microphone. And then they move on. Moicano was in the back of the media room. We noticed he was on the phone. We didn't understand what was going on. And then he's gone. Once he left, then they made the announcement. And yeah,
incredible.
he probably knew ahead of time about this announcement, but it was a shock to us all to have everything change, like you said, with a snap of the fingers. We have to change our content plan because we were just thinking, oh yeah, we'll go to the weigh-ins. That's about it. Now we got to drop everything and break this down because the implications of him not fighting, who Islam's fighting next, the injury, because we still at that point we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out what the heck actually happened to this guy, and that's where rumors started swirling around of, oh, maybe he couldn't make weight, or oh, it was an injury from a long time ago, or whatever it may
Or
be.
the injury from the video with Nina Drama.
With Nina, which
A
makes
lot
no
of
sense to me because if you know anything about these guys, that's a normal warm up, okay?
Yeah. He's posted that warm up many times on his own Instagram. He's done it a
Yeah.
million times. We've posted it
So
on our
so
own
many
page.
other fighters. So have so many other fighters from that area, but people they just want to put their opinion out
Everything's
there.
a conspiracy theory these days, and it's and even till now, like Merab revealed that he fought with that huge cut, and everyone's saying, "Oh, well, he fought with that huge cut, and Arman can't fight when his back hurts." And it's like, I
Two
don't know.
different injuries,
I'm
and I don't think this is
I think a lot of people don't understand what goes into these weight cuts, and it's very unhealthy. It's very dangerous sometimes. Khabib Nurmagomedov in 2017, he had a similar situation where he had to pull out of a fight because something happened to him during the weight cut, and he came out stronger. And he's a legend, undefeated. So I don't think this is the end for Arman, obviously, and obviously the fight never happened. Armand didn't fight. Saturday came and went. You covered as much as you can, but then the Sunday came around, and Islam defended his belt. He's still the champion. Very easily defended his belt, and now all the questions become, well, what's next? You asked Dana White after the post-fight press conference, and he was pretty adamant that Tsarukyan will not be getting a title shot. So
Yeah.
now we look at, everyone already knows that, though. Now we look at the lightweight rankings in the UFC, and we see that Islam is obviously the champion, and Tsarukyan is still the number one contender, and Charles Oliveira is the number two contender. So if Dana White is saying that Arman will not be fighting Islam next, then the next obvious question becomes, who is Arman going to fight next? Will it be Charles Oliveira, a rematch? Will it be the winner of Justin Gaethje and Dan Hooker at UFC 313, which is in March? Will it be Max Holloway, a money fight? Who knows? So, what do you think?
So here's what I think. The Gaethje and Hooker winner to fight Arman, although it sounds really nice, that fight's in March, and I'd like to see Arman fight soon, like April maybe. So I don't know if Gaethje or Hooker will be able to do a month turn. Not at all. It just makes sense to me that if Dana White's insistent on not giving Arman the title shot again, that Arman fights a five-rounder with Oliveira. And I think Arman has been way more open to that. Actually, maybe half an hour before we started recording this podcast, I think Arman went on social media to Instagram and posted some photos saying, "I'm the number one contender. Anybody can come at me, so I can, prove myself again." And the two photos that he used were photos from his Oliveira fight. I think that makes the most sense. I would
I
hope
don't
that
think it
happens
makes sense
sooner
at
than
all,
later.
Jason. I don't think it makes sense at all, because if you're Tsarukyan, you're the number one contender. You want to stay the number one contender. You've already beat Oliveira. Oliveira is a very dangerous opponent. He can easily come back with more film. He can beat you. He should have won that fight. He was choking out Arman. He almost won. It was very close. If you're Arman, I think just stay active. Find a fight with anybody and stay active. I don't even think Gaethje is the answer. And I think it helps him that Gaethje fights in March. I think it makes most sense. Arman, in April, the UFC goes to Miami. He's very comfortable with Miami. ATT, American Top Team, is based out of Miami. Sign up for that card. Fight someone like Max Holloway. Fight someone like Michael Chandler or Matuz Gamrot, where it's like a big name still, like Chandler or Holloway. They're kind of still a big name, right? People will tune in to watch that fight, but he's still going to be the favorite in that fight. He will take care of business, get the W, be on a 5-fight winning streak, and then fight Islam next.
I see what you're saying. If he fought Oliveira in Miami, that would be a crazy crowd though,
Hey,
because
but
of the
he can lose.
million.
He could
Yeah.
lose, and then there goes his title shot. And then what?
Well, this is true. I will say though, I mean, he needs a five-rounder, I think. I think because he'll be going more than a year inactive at this
Max
point, he
Holloway
needs
will
that something.
gladly take a 5-rounder.
Oh, I think you're right on that. I think Max Holloway, well, he's down to fight anybody at any
Yeah.
time. So I think he's kind of a fill-in for anybody.
I love that Tsarukyan versus Holloway will be, awesome fight. It'll, and it's a safe fight too. Let's be real. Max Holloway is not the same guy that he was years ago. He is still one of the most exciting fighters, but he lost to Alex Volkanovski 3 in a row before he came back and beat Arnold Allen, Korean Zombie, and Justin Gaethje. The Gaethje fight also happened the same night that Tsarukyan beat Oliveira, but then he lost to Ilya Topuria for the UFC featherweight belt. So that was, he had to go down a weight class further, but he beats the he's not really great against the cream of the crop anymore. Again, he lost to Volkanovski 3 times. He lost to Dustin Poirier in 2019 when he was in his prime. He lost to Topuria when he was in his prime. But at the same time, he's not like a nobody. He recently beat Gaethje. He beat Korean Zombie with a knockout. Those were all recent fights. So it still makes a lot of sense for Tsarukyan to fight someone like him. Plus, it'll be a great money fight as well.
I would say I was gonna say that too. That's something that will definitely sell a lot because Max Holloway's name still carries. Like you said, even though he lost to Topuria in his last fight, that knockout to Gaethje is enough to be a seller for any pay-per-view.
Another question for you. Say Oliveira fights Tsarukyan, and Oliveira wins. So what if you're Dana White? Do you just give the title shot to Oliveira, I guess? Yeah, I guess you have to, right? But
Kind of have to, but it's a similar conversation about like Oliveira's not a spring chicken either. I think his prime is also past him, even though he's still a very dangerous, submission artist. So I mean, if he wins it, shoot, I don't know. I don't know where you go from there because he'll get the title shot, and then with Arman, he maybe has to have a couple more fights before he's back in that same picture.
I just think that if you're Arman, you don't have to prove anything anymore. You already beat Oliveira, and if you don't have to beat him again. Oliveira, I understand he came back after the Tsarukyan fight and he did get a victory, so maybe he is in a position where he can fight Arman again. But we don't need to see these two guys fight twice in a 1 year calendar span. Like, we just saw this happen. I understand if 2-3 years had passed, but we just saw this, and it's not like the lightweight division doesn't have guys. There's a lot of dudes out there: Gaethje, Dan Hooker, Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier, Michael Chandler.
The Gamrot fight would be interesting because
I brought up Gamrot earlier too, because
on that.
That's Tsarukyan's other loss in the UFC was against Gamrot. Maybe he avenges the defeat against Gamrot, and that I think maybe that's a safe fight as well. So
that could be an enticing fight, and it could be enough to sell and not be like that much taken back from money. Because I know Arman also wants to make sure that he's fighting top competitors, and he mentioned he's ready for those money fights. But I think that he needs to have a little bit of, and he said it too. He needs to stay a little bit more humble now because of what happened to him, and maybe because of that, like you said, he takes a lesser fight just to stay active. And I think that's the most important thing right now. He needs to get back in the ring or into the octagon as soon as possible.
Yeah, and I think April makes a lot of sense. It's in Miami. It's 3 months away. It gives him time to heal. He wanted to come back in April. I believe he said that. And it just makes a lot of sense. It's fight in April in Miami where you're comfortable against, a little bit lesser of an opponent, just as a tune-up. And, if you're Oliveira, I guess that kind of stinks the most for him if that does happen, because then he's kind of inactive. He fought at UFC 309 against Michael Chandler. So, maybe he's looking to fight in April as well, because that's coming up. And I guess calendar-wise, it makes sense, Oliveira versus Tsarukyan. And they both want to do it. But I wonder if, Dana is kind of looking at the long term and seeing that what are we going to do to make it most profitable? Because you can give Tsarukyan the Holloway fight and then Oliveira, a fight against maybe Dustin Poirier, who hasn't fought in a long time. Those are 2 money fights then, and you can sell 2 fights that way.
That is, and you could even sell it like Poirier and Oliveira. It's like a retirement fight.
Retirement fight, or one more chance for redemption. Give these guys, pit these guys in the octagon, and say Tsarukyan struggles against Holloway, and like he wins, but it's by split decision. But Oliveira submits Poirier really quickly. Then maybe if you're Dana White, it gives you the option to still give Oliveira a title shot. Whereas if you set up Tsarukyan and Oliveira together, you're basically picking one or the other, with the risk of having Islam fight against Oliveira again.
Yeah.
which
And
is
I
we've
think we
seen
all know
before.
how that would go.
Well, it has not. They haven't fought since 2022, but we've seen it happen. So
Right.
I don't know. There's a lot of options. I'm just trying to be creative and not go with the easy answer with Tsarukyan and Oliveira. You know me. I always try to
Yeah,
find
yeah,
the
I know that seems like the easy answer because it seems like that's where everyone's kind of leaning towards a 5 round fight for Arman. But at the same time, you do make a good point where it's like he just needs to stay active. There's no reason to prove himself. It's a matter of just staying active because it's not like his number one contender status has changed after 311.
yeah. I think, and also it does kind of stink because if this injury happened, say 5 weeks before the fight, right, and he couldn't fight anymore, nobody would be. I think I think both sides without the training camp would have said, okay, let's just push this fight back till April or something like that.
Or it
Uh,
would have been enough time to just heal up. I mean, it's a lower back
no,
problem.
say he
And
was had to be out of the fight, like, but it
okay,
wasn't. He wasn't ruled out the day before. Say he was ruled out uh, like a month before, but he can't fight. I think there will be more people still wanting Makhachev and Tsarukyan to be fighting next, and they wouldn't have found a replacement for Islam like Renato Moicano. They would have just pushed the fight back. They
yeah,
only got him a replacement because it was a day before. So
right.
my point in saying all that is if people would have been more forgiving if it happened a month ago because of an injury, why not be a little more forgiving to Tsarukyan because this happened a day before? And why is everyone clamoring that he has to fight Oliveira again? Why not just take someone who is, um, someone like Max Holloway?
All right, you've swayed me.
Uh,
Initially, I thought it was, the Oliveira fight that would make sense, but you've swayed me. I think you've completely swayed me on this one.
yeah, I don't know. Again, I don't know what would make most sense financially for Dana White and the UFC. Ultimately, I think that will be the decision maker. Is if this what makes the most sense financially? Does another Tsarukyan Oliveira fight make sense, or is it make more sense if we pit Tsarukyan versus Max Holloway? And they'll look at the numbers and see what will probably sell more and decide what the fight is. I think at the end of the day, it's a business, so
Mhm.
that's what will happen. I personally would like to see Tsarukyan and Holloway more than another Tsarukyan and Oliveira fight for multiple reasons. One, uh, you're risking to lose against Charles Oliveira, and two, I just think the style Tsarukyan and Holloway would be an unbelievable fight. It will be fight of the year potential.
Yeah, I agree. It'd be a lot of fun to watch, Max Holloway, duke it out with Arman, and then it would also show Arman's more, standing game. Obviously you want to
Exactly.
go into the ground with Holloway, but we want to see more of that from Arman because we know he has a few tricks up his sleeve.
Yeah.
But overall, it's gonna be interesting to see what Dana White ends up making, what his decision is gonna be, because I think obviously his word is what carries in the UFC. And because he was adamant about Arman not getting the title shot next, and I asked him that question a second time, even though he had already been asked it, just to see if he would have anything else he would say. And he just seemed really cut and dry. And it almost seemed like Dana White was a little bit ticked off. It almost seemed
Of
like he was
course.
ticked off at
Of course.
Arman not being able to fight. And everyone has their own, feelings and opinions on that injury. But Arman said it himself that Wednesday after training, that's when
Gonna
he
walk.
started feeling something in his lower back. And like you said, once he started doing the weight cutting and starting to lose body weight, body water or your water weight essentially, you exacerbate, your injuries, any of them, really.
Yeah. And he said he couldn't walk. So I mean,
Yeah.
I'm gonna believe him. I'm not. I don't think he was a coward. He could he be a fought? Yeah, maybe, and he would have lost, and it would have not been an exciting fight, and he would have.
Or he would have had a bigger problem because lower back injuries are no joke.
Yeah, I agree. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, we didn't see that fight, but we have three more Armenians ready to fight in the next couple months. Next up on the list is the UFC Seattle fight card, I believe. No,
It's
the
a
UFC
UFC
Apex.
Fight Night in Vegas, February 15th, and Edmund Shabazian's first fight. I think the week after that is Seattle. Am I mistaken?
Correct. And
Okay.
Jason, you will be at the Edmund Shabazian fight at the Apex, hopefully.
Yes.
That is being headlined by Jared Cannonier and Gregory Rodriguez. Edmund Shabazian is not the co-main, but he's the fight before the co-main, so he'll be the third to last fight on that card. Second to last fight's a good one too. Calvin Cater, a Boston guy. So
Mm.
maybe we can get you set up with the Boston Globe, and you'll do a little piece on that.
Possible. It's
And then
possible. Yeah, Edmund's fighting this guy. His name is Dylan Budka, and his
Dylan Butka.
nickname is Mindless Hulk. I just wanted to point that out because isn't the Hulk already mindless?
He is, yeah. I don't know. He is 7-4. Uh, Interesting. He has has been in the UFC for 2 fights. He lost both of them, so he's 0-2 in the UFC,
Yeah,
and
he won on the Contender Series,
won
and I
on the
think
Contender Series. This
that's
should
what.
be a layup for Edmund. I haven't seen the odds yet, but this if Edmund loses this, then that's a problem. Edmund lost his last fight. That's been his issue. He can't be consistent. He hasn't won back-to-back fights since 2019. He was 11-0, lost 3 in a row, then had a performance of the night at UFC 282.
Mhm.
Um, but then followed that up with a knockout loss, then followed that up with a knockout win, and then he lost to Gerald Mearshart in August. So
Yeah, it
he's
tapped.
an up and down roller coaster, and he's not a young guy anymore. He's 27, so he's entering his prime. So this is a big fight for Edmund.
Yeah.
Edmund Shabazian. The next week is UFC Seattle. Melsik Bagdasaryan against Gene Silva. You look up Gene
He's a
Silva.
veteran, isn't he? Gene
What's that?
Silva. Gene Silva's a vet, isn't he? He's been around the block.
Gene Silva is 28 years old. His nickname is Lord, from Sao Paulo, Brazil. He is 14-2 in his career and is 3-0 in the UFC with 3 knockout wins. He is going to be a
Okay.
tough fight. He seems like a tough matchup for Melsik. So I would
Yeah.
assume Gene Silva is probably favored in that fight. Melsik is coming off a unanimous decision win in 2023. He hasn't fought in more than a year and a half against. So, he's 8-2, only 2 losses, but this will be a tough one for him. He's 3-1 in the UFC.
If he wins, it'll be nice, I would say, to get a little bit of momentum underneath him. Like you said, he had a few fights that had to be canceled due to injury,
Yes,
due
he's
to just
32 years old now too.
circumstances.
He's getting up there in age as well. 32 years old. Um, which isn't old. I am
Now's the time for
35.
him to kick some ass, right?
Right. So, and then the next Armenian fight, UFC 313, Armen Petrosyan and Bruno Ferreira. Armen
Uh-huh.
Petrosyan has been one of the most underwhelming Armenian UFC fighters. He's lost his last 2 fights. He made the highlight reels in his last fight, getting knocked out by Shara Magomedov, Shara Bullet, a spinning back fist knockout. That was in
Double
October.
spinning back fist knockouts. Just insane.
Yeah, it was very ugly, very devastating. Right before that, he lost to Rodolfo Vieira February. The 2 fights before then were a couple of unanimous decision wins. Overall in the UFC, he is 3-3, but he's never had a finish in the UFC. All of his wins have been via decision. And his last 2 fights were obviously he got finished. So this is a big one for him if he wants to remain on the UFC roster. And we'll keep an eye out for that. UFC 313. He's also 34 years old, so he's up there in age as well. Middleweight, Armen Petrosyan. No word yet on when Caitlin Chukagian, Isaac Dulgarian, and Ludwig Sholinian will be fighting. Those are the other Armenians on the UFC roster. But we will keep you posted when we find out more. Again, I'm most excited to see Isaac fight, but
Yeah, I'm excited to see who he fights, where he fights, and when. At this point, I feel like it's long overdue for him to get back into the
yeah, he
octagon
fought
and
in I
prove
think
himself.
September, right? August or September. Got a big win there after that controversial loss. So it'll be
Mm.
interesting to see what he does. And of course, Gerard Mousasi. We'll have some news about him soon. I'm
That's
guessing
that's true. The Global Fight League,
Global
correct?
Fight League. He's on the roster, and it's like a team style. So he's going to be drafted today. He's one of the bigger names on the GFL roster. So the dream catcher.
Yeah.
Can you guess how many
That'll be
fights he's
interesting.
had in his career, Jason?
Say that again?
Can you guess how many fights Gerard Mousasi has had in his career?
Oh boy.
He's
In
been
his
fighting.
professional career, like let's say 60 or 65.
Exactly. You guessed it. 60. Did you cheat?
What?
Exactly 60.
Exactly 60? Okay,
Yes.
I was guessing. I knew it was high, but I didn't know exactly how much.
60 matches, 49 wins, 9 losses, 2 draws. 2 of those 9 losses were his last 2 fights when he lost the Bellator middleweight belt and then lost his last fight way back in May 2023. But that's what happens to all of us, right? We have our heyday and then Father Time catches up to us and we lose.
There
So,
you go.
but Musasi's not done yet. He's 39 years old. He wants to keep fighting. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in this GFL league. We'll keep
It'll
an
be
eye on.
interesting to see how that plays out. It's very unique. I think they're gonna have playoffs coming up in the next couple months.
Yeah, it's like a
They're fighting
team
in different
system. So I
cities.
think it's like each team has like is going to have 2 heavyweights, 2 light heavyweights, 2 middleweights, and it's going to be like a roster, and they're gonna each team will be fight their international cities. They'll be representing international cities. Doesn't mean they have to live there, but they will be playing for that city, and you know it'll be, I don't know. It's different, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, we'll see how it goes. But the draft is, I think, today, so we will keep an eye out for that.
Perfect.
Jason, this was fun. Again, an incredible job in Los Angeles.
Thank you.
You did top-notch performance. You were the UFC Armenian champion last weekend because Arman didn't fight, and you did a better job than Manuk in doing your reporting. And we are very proud of you to have you on the ASN family. And this was the Jason Takhtadjian interview. I think like we interviewed you on your UFC coverage.
I guess you could say that. And we didn't even get to talk about the conversation with Murad. It's funny. In the post-fight press conference, he held up the entire media room for at least 2 minutes just to come and talk to me because he walks in, he still has his gloves on, still has his shorts on, comes up to me with this handout saying, "My Armenian brother, I am so sorry about Arman. I had injuries, this and that." Starts talking, and then all of a sudden, middle of his train of thought, he goes, "How do you say hello in Armenian again?" I go, "Barev." He goes, "Ah, Barev. Anyway, I'm so sorry about Arman, da da da." And that's where you would see the 20-second clip we have on ASN because some random media guy, after like a minute and a half, realized to start recording this conversation because, this doesn't happen that often. The guy has his belt on his, shoulder and he's just chatting it up with me. Then
Yeah,
he goes and does his press conference. And when he's done, again, before he leaves the room, hands out for a handshake. "Thank you again for all your work. How do you say thank you in Armenian?" I go, "Shonor agalutsun." He goes, "Shonor agalutsun." How do you say hello again? "Barev." "Barev. Oh, it was very nice to meet you. Thank you." And he leaves. And I was just like, did that just happen? And then like 10 minutes later, I'm fist bumping Hasbullah. So it's like, go figure. It was an insane post-fight press conference.
yeah, it's that's an amazing story, and I'm glad you saved that best for last. That's awesome.
There you go.
Thank you again, Jason. Thank you everyone for tuning in. I know this was kind of a long one, but we had a lot to talk about. We'll be back again next time on the ASN podcast.